Deltia. Welcome to the Village Oak Tree for September 25th. And I'm your host, Terrence O'Donnell. Thank you for joining me once again. This week, I want to introduce Carla Vergot. I hope I pronounced her name right. An author with 3 books out, with a fourth in progress, according to her website, and are entitled the Lily Barlow series. So let me bring her on stage here and let's get into what we got going on today.
Hey, Terrence.
So first of all, right out of the gate, tell us about your books.
Sure. It's a series based around a young woman's experience. She lives in a small town in Virginia. The town is actually right up the road from where I live. And she wants desperately to be out of the small town. So she goes off to school at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville, but is called home when her father has a heart attack. He's fine in the story. She just has to get the family business back on track, which she does while she's home for a very short time. She thinks that she has identified the identity of a murdered victim.
All right. So here's what I'm going to do. I was smart about this a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to show people what your books look like.
Oh, because I was smart too. Oh, that's my picture.
Yeah. I took it right off your website.
I love it. Awesome.
So for those who don't know what these books look like, this is some examples of her books. So tell us now where we can find these.
You can get these, Terrence, anywhere you buy books. I'm proud to say that I'm supported by Ingram. So any independent bookstore can order them in. Barnes and Noble has them. Wherever you buy your books, you can find Lily Barlow.
Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about, and this is something that you related a little bit on your profile here, about where you got the idea to write these stories. So tell us where the idea came from.
Well, a little background about myself. I went to college to be a writer. I studied language arts, writing, and editing, and that was my master plan, and that was 30 years ago. So it has taken that long, and I think for a lot of us, I know there's a lot of writers probably watching this podcast. I think that probably happens. Our intentions to write are there, and the passion to write is there, and then life gets in the way. So I'm sure I'm not alone.
Right.
I was teaching at this time. I was teaching special education in the public schools here in Virginia, and decided it was time to take a sabbatical to finally write. I did that, and when I did, my husband was diagnosed with a very deadly form of cancer, fast-moving, aggressive, and fatal. So those two things happened kind of simultaneously. It was just a gift of God, really, that I had embarked upon the sabbatical, because then I was available for his treatments and travel back and forth to Charlottesville. And that's really where I started writing the book, when he was undergoing his treatments. He's fine. He's cancer-free today, by the way.
Good.
But that's where it started. And I was speaking recently about it. It really became a funnier story as I was writing it, because I think that's what I needed at that time. I needed that kind of lighthearted silliness. And so it really took a turn that I wasn't anticipating. And it became, I call it now, a rom-com story, romance, comedy, and mystery. But the comedy in the story is a big part of it.
That's good. That's good. Because I'll be honest with you, a lot of people need a little humor in their life these days. Yeah. With everything that's going on, that's my darker side. I'm all about finding the humor on the light side of things.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
The series is very light and flirty. I told people when I originally released it, so I've released books 1 and 2 twice. The first time I released them, I told people that this was not a book that you were going to read and come out the other end feeling like you had become a better person. I said that this was not a protein shake. This was a Jell-O shooter.
Okay.
And the whole idea was just to have fun with it.
Right. Well, a lot of people like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's good. I'm gonna have to look into that. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't typically, myself. I, my background is pretty much all military. I spent most of my adult life traveling around the world doing things I shouldn't be doing. Um, and so I say that's my darker side. But my lighter side, in my later years now, I wrote this book that I have, and you know, I'm not going to talk a little bit about my book because we're not here about my book. But see, the idea is I wrote it because I was in one of those darker moods, I guess, if you want to call it. So I wrote an action adventure book. Of course, being career military, what else am I going to do, right? I'm not much on writing comedy, but it's been an interesting journey. I mean, I'm myself. I my biggest thing is finding the time to write more, and I I I, I guess I sort of kind of took a sabbatical in some way. I published the book last fall, and I this year I decided I wanted to get into. Well, somebody talked me into doing podcasting, and I thought, okay, you know what? That'll help me on my what I call my dark side. Some of the things that I'm kind of angry about. So I decided to do that. Well, I'm finding out that it's eating into my writing time. So here I am coming up on the new year, and I'm thinking, all right, it's time to make a change because I truly miss sitting down and just writing books, for example. I mean, I've got a second one plotted out in my head as part of my series. I just got to sit down behind the keyboard and get it done.
I think there are so many things that eat into the writing time now for writers that probably authors didn't really encounter,
Mm,
20 years ago. It's important now to have your social media kind of
mhm,
lined up. I spend a lot of time in my Facebook group. It's called Carla Vergot's Back Porch. I post daily, and I interact with the people that come in and
mm.
make comments on the posts. And it's quite a community. It's really actually very special.
Yeah,
But it takes a lot of time. It definitely takes
right.
time away from the writing process. Instagram, I'm barely scratching the surface there, but
Mm,
that's another area where for authors, you kind of want to create a presence. So I totally understand where you're coming from. It's hard to make the time to do the work of writing because of
right,
all the work of being an author.
right. And that's one of the things that I found out the hard way. Was it was one thing I before I got ready to publish the book. I did a lot of research about which way to go. And even up till then, I had heard nothing but negative stories about trying to run the gamut of traditional publishing houses, all the rejection slips and all the stuff that went with that. And I thought, you know what? I don't need that. So then there was a lady last year. I guess she's an editor or some kind of thing. She made a post on LinkedIn, and I thought to myself, hmm. So then I reached out to her and I asked her about it, and she sent me a fairly decent paragraph about the pros and cons, and mostly cons of going to traditional publishing house. And I thought, well, you know what? I don't have patience for this. That's to me, that's the nail in the coffin for me. I just went and started looking into KDP, Barnes and Noble, Ingram Spark, and a couple others. And there's a couple others out there that I should be looking into to publish, see if they'll distribute my book as well. I haven't gotten around to that. Again, that's part of my fault saying, well, you know what? I'm going to try this podcasting thing and see how much fun I can have with that. Well, then I found out that it's more work than fun. So now it's like, okay, I have more fun writing books than I did doing this. Um, what
I
we're doing today,
I haven't started a podcast myself for that very reason.
yeah,
So
I it's one of those deals where I kind of enjoy talking to people. Don't get me wrong. It's just that it eats up so much of my time every week. I'm asking myself, okay, how much do I want to invest in this
sure.
because of you know, of the time I got to invest in this. And I've got this, I got people asking me, "Oh, you need to do this, you need to do that." And I'm like, Do you understand? I'm not doing this because this is a full-time job. I never wanted it to be a full-time job. You know, I'm I'm looking for, I'm looking for stuff to do that it's enjoyable. So let's talk about traditional publishing a little bit.
Sure.
As I said, I just self-published right off the gate. Okay. So tell me, what did you do?
I realized pretty quickly that I don't have the skill set required to be a self-published author.
Hmm,
I write a great story. I don't do so good with the tech piece of it. And
okay.
you can attest to that because I had trouble getting onto our podcast. So I knew pretty quickly that that wasn't going to work for me.
Okay.
I did. Then your options are you're going to go the traditional route,
Hmm.
or you're going to find a literary agent,
Right.
um, or you're going to find a hybrid. So the traditional route, as we know, it's really hard to penetrate.
Mhm.
The statistic I use, and I hope I'm getting this right, 20,000 books come out every month.
Wow.
That's a lot of traffic.
It is.
So with that many writers out there, the big publishing houses have plenty to choose from. So
Sure.
I was told if I sent my story to a big publishing house, it would land in somebody's office, stacked around the room 3 feet high, and it may never get read.
Mhm.
Um, that my next option was to find a literary agent who could get me in the door. And I had such a bad experience with it. I just
Wow.
couldn't get anybody interested in my story. And I think it's a fairly lively, kind of fun story.
Mhm.
And some of its trademarks are it's a southern town. It's a southern girl. She
Mhm.
has close knit friends. There's an unidentified murdered victim. Like there were some very interesting pieces. It's got its own brand of comedy. I think her voice is very fresh, Lily's voice. Um, and I would read online. I would read these literary agents and what they were looking for. Um, Southern setting. Okay, I got that. Fresh voice. I got that. And it would just rattle through and it would just read like, wow, this screams Lily Barlow.
Mhm.
And I would get the auto-generated responses I would submit online. And within 45 minutes, I get a response. This doesn't suit what we're looking for right now. So it's
Mhm.
really demoralizing
Yeah.
because either it does or it doesn't. And I think that if that's what you're advertising that you're looking for, you should at least give it a fair shake.
Mhm.
But nobody did. I couldn't get anybody to take a serious look at it. So then I moved on to what was really the last alternative for me, which was the hybrid. And I know you've heard of the vanity press. We all have.
Yeah, I've heard of Vanity Press.
Word, right? Nobody likes to associate themselves with the vanity press. And probably there is legitimately some concerns.
Mhm.
You should be wary of it. This is the way I look at it. If I'm gonna, get the oil changed in my car, I will take my car to a service and ask Jiffy Lube to do it. I
Mhm.
don't want to do it myself, so I
Right.
will hire somebody to do that for me. And that's kind of the way I looked at it. I found the right person to be the hybrid publisher. I hired somebody to self-publish my book, essentially.
Mm.
Was
Ah.
was not a big publishing house at all. But this person, Jesse Krieger, and I'm still friends with him today. He had a lot of ins into the things that were important to me.
Mhm.
I wanted to be represented by or distributed by Ingram
Okay.
because I think that makes it easy for little bookstores to get your book.
Okay.
If not, I didn't plan to carry cases of the book in the back of my truck and let
Yeah.
it be available that way. Although many people do, and some do it successfully, that was never my plan. So as soon as I understood that he was working toward an agreement with Ingram, that became important for me. He could coordinate some of the things like the art for the covers. That was really important for me.
Mhm.
And so he put together a number of pieces. Unfortunately, Jesse didn't weather COVID, and his publishing enterprise closed.
Ah.
So then I'm without a publisher. I had published 1 and 2 at that time. I had to find a new publisher and basically start over,
Wow.
which I did. Morgan James Publishing. I'm very happy with the team over there. They're it's a great institution, and they really have a solid understanding of how to move the author's book forward.
Okay.
But it is not an arrangement where they reach out to you and say, "Hey, we want to hire, we want to, essentially
Right.
buy your book and put it out there." I do also put money into this agreement.
Hmm.
And a lot of people say that it's a no-no for any author to pay to have a book published. And I think that that is just,
Now that's wrong now.
yeah, well, you know, it's an option,
Yeah.
and it's always falls under the umbrella of buyer beware.
Hmm.
But if it is what you want to do, and you're buying the service that is appropriate for your book, and
Right.
you can get it distributed the way you want it distributed, I think that that's an important piece to look at. Bottom line is, I tell everybody it is really hard to
Hmm.
sell books.
It is.
It's
It
hard to do
is.
it
And I can
because
attest to
there's
that
so much
myself.
traffic.
Yeah. I mean, I give you an idea. Like I said, I went straight into, just to kind of back up a little bit. I'm a retired IT network engineer. So I have no problems at all with the technology part of it.
Sure.
Right. It took me a little bit, but I figured out how to set up the manuscript with Amazon's KDP program.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, that's where the buck stopped. I did okay with the technology part of it, but I had a lot of trouble setting up the SEO and all the other stuff. And at first, getting a good cover for the book, oh, I messed all that stuff up like crazy. So then I found this online company called Readsy, and they're kind of like what you're talking about to a degree, with your Morgan and Stanley people. They have people on there that you hire to do stuff, right?
Right.
So my first thing was, okay, I need a good cover because that's what everybody told me to do. And there was no way I could do it on my own. I'm not that creative. So I hired somebody to create a good cover for the book. And it turned out she did a really good job because I got reviews from other people. I said, all right, well, that's a good start. And I had to revise things quite a few times. But again, the technical part of that is easy for me because I understand all that stuff. But then I had to go into, all right, now I got a good cover. I got everything in the book that I need to have, like the copyright page and all that other silly stuff. I said, all right, finally got it ready to go. Now, what do I do with it? Well, now you got to market it. So that's the point where I'm like, all right, now what do I do? So through Readsy, I recently found somebody, and the marketing is costing me a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, oh, and this young lady that I interviewed for this week's show, um, she she had the same problems and different issues with publishers and so on. But her biggest thing was she actually travels around the country, sets up booths in these book fairs, and sells books underneath an awning. And I'm like, well, no, I'm not doing that. Okay, I have no problem at all about showing off my book. I mean, I gave something to the local library here. Obviously my children got copies of it, that kind of thing. I mean, that's just what you do, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, though, I'm actively marketing, but it's hard because I am using social media. I post something on LinkedIn and Instagram now and again. I've got a Facebook page that showcases the book, that kind of stuff, but it only gets you so far.
Right.
See? So now you're kind of telling me something that I'm learning also. This, Morgan Stanley company or what have you.
Morgan James.
Morgan James,
Yeah.
whatever. Morgan Stanley sounds like a hammer. But yeah, I mean, yeah, Morgan James. So say I'm going to look into that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Y- I think that for us who have a story to tell, I think it bodes well to look into all of the options. It sounds like
Right.
you did a great job kind of screening through the self-publishing options that are available out there, and that's a biggie.
Yeah.
I think it's that section of the pie is very accessible to a lot of people who have your skills to do that kind of thing. I don't know that books get marketed the way they used to. I think it is often upon the author to do
Mm,
the marketing
I'm learning
piece.
that.
And I think that's true of even bigger houses.
Hmm.
Um, you're just kind of expected to be doing that sort of stuff because we all can be on Facebook, we all can be on
Yeah.
Twitter, we all can be on, whatever. And so if you're promoting yourself and putting your images, your book's images out there, um, I think maybe publishing houses think that we're all capable of doing it. So it does become the third or fourth job of being a writer is the marketing part.
I'm learning that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
And that's I mean, that's a steep hill to climb, truthfully. And
it
I'm learning
is.
that. I
I
mean,
my goal is always to try to find a couple a year. I do Facebook author events, and so you need to spend plenty of time online on Facebook,
mhm,
um, joining groups, participating in discussions about books, making friends with the people before you can really start asking, if you could showcase your book on this in this group, or if you could
mhm,
showcase your book at one of their author events. But eventually what you'll find if you take this windy path is that you'll get to a place where authors probably bigger than you will say, hey, I'm doing an author event with 300 authors next weekend. And what you'll do then is if you're invited to participate, you can go onto that person's group where all these readers will be available, and you
mhm.
post about your story and you get people to kind of get interested in you that way.
Wow.
It is a super slow process.
Yeah.
I've been my Facebook group, Carla Vergot's Back Porch, had just had its 5th anniversary, and I have only 800 people on the
Wow.
back porch. And probably, I don't know for sure, but I would guess 100 or fewer are actually active on
Mhm.
it.
Right.
But we all know that word of mouth is what sells books. And so as long as
Yeah.
you can get a small group, even a small group of people talking about your book,
Mhm.
that's how you're going to grow your community. And as you
Okay.
grow your community, you have more opportunities to talk about your book.
Well, that's good. That's good to know. Because I mean, I just spent a bunch of money on a big Amazon thing where I hired somebody from Reezy to set up my Amazon profile with the book profile,
Yeah.
not me personally, but the book profile. He made a big ad campaign thing on there, and we're doing some other stuff. That's going to run till the end of the month. But I thought to myself, well, that's all well and great. It'll be up and I'll leave it up there and people can go after it and do whatever they want. But still, you have to point people in that direction. And
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say that Amazon is going to be my go-to distributor either, because I set something up on Barnes and Noble. Ingram, I don't really advertise too much about Ingram because they're more of a commercial distributor, so
Yeah.
to speak, libraries, bookstores, that kind of thing. So I don't worry about that too much. I'll let them handle that. But I did put up a thing on Lulu so I could show the book overseas,
Hmm.
because the characters in my book are not traditional. Okay, so I thought, well, you know what? I would market this outside the United States as much as possible, especially with things the way they are going overseas. And maybe I'll pick up some readers out there besides right here in North America. So we'll see how that works out.
Yeah.
Goes back to social media though. I mean, so you have, and you've given me this great idea. Okay. And if it's a good idea for me, then any other authors watching this will say, hey, the light bulb goes off in our heads. And hey, maybe this is a good idea for the rest of us. Um,
I have found it to be a really important idea for me. I don't do any of the paid advertising on any of
yeah.
the platforms. I don't know enough about it to make sure I'm spending the money correctly. And
Well,
as you put your books out there, you are going to end up spending money in so many different places. You
right.
want to really know how it's working and
Yeah. Well,
what
I
you're
will tell you,
getting
it's
for it.
tricky. It's very tricky. And
Yeah,
you have to be really, really, really careful. All
yeah,
right. That's one of the things that I learned. Um, for example, Amazon, just for because it's the number one supposedly book distributor, worldwide. But they do everything by click. So every time somebody clicks on your book profile, you got to pay for that. So the more clicks you got, the more you're going to pay.
Right.
So if you don't know how to set the limits on that, then your budget just goes out the window because
Right.
everybody's clicking on it, but nobody's buying it. But
Right.
you're paying for that.
Yeah.
So you have to be really, really careful. Um, Barnes and Noble has something somewhat similar. It's not quite as robust. Facebook is another one you got to really watch out for. If you run an ad campaign on Facebook for your book, it can rack up money like crazy very quickly.
See, that's why I haven't done it. I
Yeah.
just I don't know that that's the strategy for me. I'm really kind of working toward a more organic,
Yes.
finding people that sort of like this style of writing and
Right.
bringing them together that
Mhm.
way. And as a result, I end up making friendships with
Mhm.
other authors, either in similar genres or in completely different genres. But then we
Sure.
start supporting each other. So
Right.
you're just building community that way.
Exactly.
I will say this: my publisher, David Hancock, is the main guy at
Mhm.
my publishing house, and he is part of a book that's called Guerrilla Marketing for Authors. I think there's a series of these books, Guerrilla Marketing, blah 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 blah.
Mhm.
But this one is for authors. You might want to just grab a copy at the library and flip through it, and see if it's worth investing in the book, because it
Mhm.
does have a lot of low budget kinds of things to do
Okay.
to get your momentum going.
Okay.
I have a copy around here somewhere. If you want, I can grab it and show you the cover, or we could do it off screen at the end of the interview.
No, no, you can show us. You can show us right now if you got it
Let
handy.
me see if I can
Yeah,
get it
go
real
right
quick.
ahead. So this is kind of interesting. I'll wait for her to come back with this book, and this is kind of like a almost turning into an educational podcast here for budding authors. Me being one of them. I'm always all about learning things. Uh, but at the same time, for those of you who watch this, who are thinking about or have written a book and are worried about what are you going to do with it. So and here we go. So
Can you see that?
yeah, guerrilla marketing for writers. Okay, so this is pretty much like you can find this in like Barnes and Noble and
Yeah.
Amazon and all the other usual places.
Again, I think it's wherever you buy your books, you'll be able to find this book.
Okay.
And it's 100 no cost, low cost weapons for selling your work.
Huh. Good to
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I'll have to go look for that because I'm all about learning stuff.
Yeah.
I mean
Yeah.
that's part of the journey here as far as life goes.
Yeah.
I had somebody, years and years and years ago when I was first starting out in life. He was an elderly gentleman, and I was just wet behind the ears. And the first thing he told me was, "Don't ever, ever, every day of your life, never stop learning something. If you go, if you don't learn something new every day, you're not doing something right." I'm like, okay,
I I agree with that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, as old as I am, I still hold to that. Um, that gentleman is long past, but
I totally agree with you, and it's one of the reasons why I keep connecting with other authors, because there's always somebody out there who's going to
Mhm.
have a tip for you, or a
Right,
better way to do it, or have you tried this kind of thing. And as you build the relationships with those people, they are very quick to help you out if you need to
mhm,
do an event to give some books away. I mean, I find myself giving a lot of books away in the
mm,
process of trying to generate word of mouth. And that's something that you need to be wary of,
right,
because if you're uh, they all books cost something.
yes,
If you're paying whatever fee for your book, you need to just understand what it means when you give that away.
right,
Um, the next thing, obviously, I'm sure you've run up against this as well, is asking people for reviews
yeah,
on all of the platforms. And I think that folks are just weary. I think that
Mhm.
they feel like you're expecting them to write a book report, maybe from
Mhm.
seventh grade, which isn't true at all. So fairly often in my back porch, I will do a post about how easy it can be to write a review and how simple. You just have to, you can say, I really enjoyed the characters,
Right.
period. That's a
Right.
review.
Sure.
You don't have to go into a synopsis. A lot of people really like to summarize the books, and I think that's kind of a different reader entirely. But you
Mhm.
can get your readers to just leave one sentence,
Sure.
and that counts. So once you start to rack up the reviews, then the platforms where you're offering the book, whether it's Amazon, it's Barnes and Noble, they start to notice that
Mhm.
the reviews are building.
Sure. I mean, it shows people that are, they're actually reading the book. And
Right,
that's what's important to them.
right.
But and it goes back to that. So just to kind of fall back on that a little bit, I said, as I've had a LinkedIn account for like decades, since anybody forever. Again, because I'm a techie guy, it's one of those things. No, I retired from the tech industry a couple years ago. I still keep my hands in it a little bit
Sure.
here and there. I mean, I was helping some young man fix his laptop last night on, using a phone and text messaging, but still, I still play with that. But again, it goes back to, because of this LinkedIn account, it is a social media marketing, if you will, more of a semi-commercial kind of professional kind of thing, which is fine. Okay. But it is what it is. So here recently, a lot of people from way all over the world have found my profiles. Oh, you write books. Oh, I want to sell you something.
Yeah.
They're trying to sell me marketing stuff,
Yes.
social media posting, reviews. You can pay us. We'll review your book. And I'm like, no, because I don't want you just hooking up an AI bot and posting a review and you haven't even read the book.
Yeah. And it's going on. I mean, as we said earlier, you just have to be really wary of
Mhm.
the team that you've surrounded yourself with.
Right.
My first team was great. I really trusted and understood that they had my best interests at heart. My second team is great. The same thing. I trust that they have my best interest at heart.
Mhm.
And so when you finally land in the space where you have a team, and it can be self-publishing, but you're still going to put your team around you. You're still going to have
Right.
somebody who designs your cover. You're going to have somebody who, they're just going to be people.
Right.
And if you know them and communicate with them and sort of build that relationship with them, then they're going to help you.
Yeah. Well, that's what I found out with my book cover editor. Initially it was kind of get to know each other kind of thing. And I came back to her and I told her, I says, look, said you and I gotta had a good relationship to begin with. Now I want to do a couple of revisions on the book cover. So are you willing to help me out? So she jumped all over it. And we built up a good rapport that way.
Yeah.
So, my next book, once I sit down and actually get to finish it writing it, I'm gonna go back to her again and said, hey, are you ready to go? And let's do this again. And she's all on board with that. I already asked her about it.
Yeah.
Now, I do need to find a new editor because my original editor, she was a one time. That was it. I'm not doing it again.
Yeah.
I'm busy doing other things. I'm like, okay, I get it. No pressure. So now I got to find another editor. But again, it's going to be one of those deals. Once I do latch on to somebody, and if we get along really well, I'll go back.
Yeah.
How it is.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in your marketing strategy though, because this thing with this Facebook groups, I say the reason I say that is because somebody told me about book groups. Okay, like going to your local library and
Mhm.
signing up to do book group, that kind of thing. I mean, do you have anything like that?
Well, sure. I take every opportunity. If there's a book club that wants to read my book, and it's local, I will absolutely participate. I'd love
Oh,
to talk with people about the book.
okay.
And it doesn't really matter what size group it is. I just
Right.
love talking about the book.
Okay.
Um, so I will say yes to anybody, any group. even if it's got to be a Zoom because they're in New
Of course.
Jersey and
Sure.
I'm here, I think that authors can't get enough of those
Oh, right,
actually,
right, right.
because it
Yeah.
does a couple of things. It gets your word out.
Hmm.
It gets you known to people
Right.
who then say, "Hey, I talked to this author at my book club, and
Okay.
we had a fun time." That kind of thing. It also helps you kind of refine the delivery of how you talk about your book and,
Sure.
and streamline that a little bit. So I will always accept those invitations. Not that easy to find them, believe it
Well,
or
that
not.
was my next question.
Yeah, because they're just not. So obviously, starting at the library is a great idea.
Okay.
The reason I find that they're not that easy is because a lot of book clubs kind of schedule the next 12 months in advance. And
Oh,
so if you're meeting up with them now, they may already have books picked out for months
next,
ahead.
yeah, month ahead.
So that's kind of tough. If you can, um, if your book, I'm not sure exactly what your genre is. Action, I heard you say.
Yeah,
Um,
it's kind of an action adventure romance kind of.
okay. Is it historical?
It's dystopian future.
Oh, dystopian future. I was going to say, well, you could go to the History Society, but I don't think there's a dystopian
Nah,
futuristic society. But I think you get my point. If you can
right.
find where people congregate that like your kind of thing, go there.
Okay.
I just it was the first time they had it. It was at a community college not far from here.
Mhm.
And it was it's called the Christmas Book Club book sale. And it was the day after Thanksgiving. They did
Mm,
it last year. I have my fingers crossed that they'll do it again. And so a lot of independent authors came together, self-published authors. Everybody had a table. It was fairly inexpensive to do it. And if you sell books kind of out of the back of your truck, then this is for you. You just tote your books in and off you
mhm.
go. For me, I don't do that.
Right.
So because it's easy for bookstores to get my book,
Mhm.
I usually, if I'm going to do an event like that, have to ask a bookstore if they can support me at the event and let them bring the books, which means they're taking a cut. So I'm not cashing in on each and every book that I sell the
Mhm.
way some authors would be, because the bookstore gets the bookstore's cut, and they should.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
that point, I'm not really there to make a huge royalty check. I'm there more to interact with people and get them
Mhm.
interested in the story, and again, the word of mouth.
Right, right. Yeah, I've heard that too. And I was kind of wondering about that. I mean, I don't live that far from you, truthfully. I just live over here on the west side of Richmond.
Oh yeah, we're neighbors
Yeah,
practically.
we're almost neighbors. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm interested in all of that. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
mean, you're the second person that's told me that go on my local library, which is just a mile up the road. Um, to start there. But I'm more interested also in learning about these Facebook groups.
Well, let me tell you, the way I started it was probably not the right way, and I learned
Well,
trial and error. So
yeah,
I'll
I've
give
learned
you
a lot
my
of things in life.
experience with that. Um, I think originally what I had done was a Facebook page, and that didn't really enable a lot of interaction. It was more of just the news of me getting ready to publish a book and then publishing
Yeah.
the book, and it was really all book related. It
Mhm.
wasn't a place where people would come and like be a part of something. It was
Right,
more of a place you would look at quickly on your way somewhere else and
right.
gather the news of the moment. And so a friend actually said, you need a group, not a page, which is then how we designed the back porch to be a group.
Huh,
And it's set up so that I let people in. You
okay.
ask if you can
Sure.
join, and what will probably happen is, because of my memory so bad, I will text you back or email you back and say, how did you hear about the back porch? Just to make sure we're not getting any hackers in. It
Oh,
has
right,
been
right.
hacked before, and it's kind of a pain to sort through all that. But we're sort of careful. I try to be very careful with the
Mhm.
people who are in there, and I try
Sure.
not to just let
All
somebody
right,
that's going to destroy it
right.
come in. So that's how I do it. And then people join fairly slowly. I kind of advise people against just sending out this mass invitation to all the people that they know, Carla
Right.
has invited you to join the back porch, because then they don't necessarily realize they've been invited. And if
Yeah.
I accept them in without them understanding what's happening, it can be a little disconcerting.
Yeah.
So I reach out to them and say, I don't know if you saw this, but you are invited by a friend and I'm happy to bring you in. But you just let me know if that's what you want. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of administrative parts that go to kind of managing the group. I have a couple people that are there more in case there was some sort of catastrophe than anything else. They don't really do a lot with posting or anything like that, but they are
Mhm.
certainly big cheerleaders in the group, and they always comment, which generates the momentum of what
Right.
you posted. And then the bottom line, Terrence, is that I use the rule of thirds. In the group, I talk about the book a third of a time. I talk about me as a writer or writing the book or my process a third of a time. And then I talk about me a third of the time,
Yeah.
just to give people a little mix of stuff. And
Sure.
the posts about me could be silly stories, but they could also be, hey, I saw this and I thought it was cool. And it was a painting with a blue house. And I just want to put it out here because, hey, isn't it cool? Just
Right.
very, it can be just very generic things like that.
Mhm.
But the goal is to always organically interact with people. I mean, I don't take for
Right.
granted any comment that's ever been delivered on the back porch, because people stop what they're doing. They have so many groups that they're members of. They
Mm.
stop and they comment on something that I've shared. So to me, that's just a little gem. That's
Sure.
something I never want to take for granted. And if you go into it with that mindset and realize that it's going to be a slow process, it builds very slowly over time, but you look back 6 months down the road and you're like, yeah, I've got a solid, and you're going to think 600 people. No, I have a solid 20 people. But that's okay, because that's how it starts. And you
Right.
just show up every day and you regularly post, and
Mhm.
people can kind of count on you. You're going to grow a community that will be very supportive of what you're doing.
Okay. Well, that's all good. That's
Mhm.
all really, really good information for all of us out here.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm writing the book wasn't that hard for me. I think I spent maybe 8 months putting it all together. And then another 3 or 4 months working with my editor out in, she lives out in the desert outside of Phoenix, Arizona. So, emailing her stuff, letting her look at it, sending everything back. We did all of everything, got it ready to go. And then it took me another couple of months to figure out how to set up the manuscript and all that kind of good stuff. So probably almost a year
Yeah.
from start to finish,
Yeah.
between you get, actually get something between a cover. And then of course another 6 months of, okay, we got to tweak this, we got to tweak that. And now I'm in a good position with that. You know what I mean? So the book is at a point where I'm ready to move on to the next one. Okay.
Sure.
And I'm good with that. But again, it goes back to all this marketing stuff. And again, so what you said in the very beginning, social media these days
Yeah.
plays a huge part of all of that advertising you got to
Yeah.
do. You
Yeah.
know?
And you should take control of your own. I mean, I don't really understand it well enough when you buy ads on any of the platforms. I just don't understand that well enough. But what I do
Yeah.
understand is I have another author on my Facebook group today, doing what we call an author takeover, and she's going to share her book with my community. So I know that those relationships are valuable, because we're crossing
Mhm.
over. I'm giving her some people that may not have been aware of her stories.
Right.
She's going to end up, there's going to be some people that follow her to my group to
Hmm.
see what she's doing, and they'll be new to me. And so it grows that way. And that I
Right.
can watch and see it unfold. The other
Right.
stuff I can't really, the buy
Now,
the ads, I can't really see that. I don't know who's seeing those ads. I don't know how they're interacting with the
well, the
ads.
biggest thing is it goes back to they're just clickbait.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're paying for the clickbait. Nobody's buying anything.
Yeah.
They're just cycling through. Hey, yeah, that looks pretty. Go on, move to the next one. But every time they do that, you're paying for that.
Yeah.
And that's what you need to stay away from.
Right. Right.
I learned it a little bit the hard way. Like I said, the technical aspects of things is easy for me, but the organic part of what happens after you get past the technical side. Well, I had to learn that the hard way.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm like, okay, well, obviously we don't do that again.
Right. Well, I would invite you and the listeners of this podcast to check out Carla Vergot's Back Porch.
Okay.
You'll have to ask to be invited. And again,
For
I
sure.
will say, where did you hear about us? And
Right.
just say it was the Village Oak Tree. And, say
Well,
something that you picked up or the title of my book or something that
right.
lets me know that you're actually a person and not a bot.
Sure. Sure.
Um, and then just kind of you're free to just watch if you want to see how I run it. You're free to comment. Everyone's welcome.
Right.
It is a very low key environment. We're not political. We don't. It is a bunch of different people from different walks of life, and we are very welcoming to one another.
Mhm.
And I don't know what happens outside of the back porch, but when we come together, it
Right.
is very loving. So everyone's welcome. You're welcome to, if you see something that's funny, to make a comment.
Mhm.
I'd sure love to show you around and
You know,
see what I'm doing.
I'm not a very I'm not a very sociable person in that
Mhm.
regard outside of doing what we're doing like today. I enjoy a great conversation. Don't get me
Yeah,
wrong. But outside of that, I don't have a lot of organic friends, so to speak. I have
yeah.
networks. I know people. I talk to people all the time. But having said that, okay, I'm all about making new friends. Okay. I
I bet this surprises you when you really dig in and get started. I bet it surprises you because the people that are going to come back regularly,
Mhm.
you're going to start to miss them if they're not there. You're going to
Right,
know, hey, I know our granddaughter is starting school this year, or I
right,
know he's getting an appendectomy, and so they are going to become your friends.
right, right,
I actually now, when I travel, I put a word out there on the back porch and say, hey, I'm going to be in this area. Can anybody meet me for coffee? And a
Hey, there
couple
you go.
people have. It's been really nice to actually sit with them and have a meal and
Right,
be with them three-dimensionally instead of
right,
in that two-dimensional environment.
right. Yeah,
But it
and
just reminds me that the power of this to move forward our
mhm,
projects is pretty amazing.
right, and I kinda like that, you know what I mean? I'm
Yeah,
all about that. I mean, I grew up in a very, very rural background, okay? I mean, I kid people. I joined the military right out of high school, but it was at the end of the Vietnam War. So as poor as my family was, we didn't have a lot of choice. My
right,
folks couldn't afford to send me to college, so it was either volunteer and go or let them pick you up and go.
right,
Either way, you're going.
right.
Okay. I'm old enough to have been caught up at the tail end of the draft, but the aspect is that I came from that very, very poor rural background, and it's still up here. You never really lose that. So I don't have any problem with talking to people, meeting people. But I'm always also very careful too. Um, but this whole thing about this group, though, you've given me some really great ideas. Um, I'm going to seriously tinker with that.
I hope you do. And
Okay.
my last parting comment on that for anybody who's interested in trying this is, I did really sort of put some thought into what to call it so
Hmm.
that it represented both me and the story.
Hmm.
So the back porch has a very homey feel. It's got a very community centered feel to
Right.
it, and I picked that on purpose. That was very specific, and I wouldn't change it. I mean,
Right.
we now refer to it. Hey, I'm going to see you on the back porch. We now refer to it as the place we're going. So
Right.
I would put some thought into naming your group,
Right.
something that reflects the story, the book that you're actually trying to promote,
Okay.
and you as well, like something that's meaningful for you. And
Right.
try do a couple trial and errors. And
Sure.
hey, if you come up with 3 or 4 names and you want to pitch it to the people on the back porch, they are readers. They're voracious and they will tell
Okay.
you which one of these to them sounds the best. And that may not be the one you
Yeah.
end up using, but if you want to, I'm more than happy to offer them up because they love
Okay.
to get involved in people's projects
Hey,
like
I'm all about
that.
that. I take all the help I can get.
Sure. We'd
Well,
love to
that's
do
good.
that.
Yeah. So this is all really, really good. So we're getting close to the end here. Um, my biggest thing is there any other advice that you could impart to any budding authors out there? Me being one of them. But still, I mean, is there anything you can offer us? You've written 3 books, and according to what I was reading about you, you're in the middle of doing a 4th one right now.
Well, at the beginning of the fourth one, but
Well,
yes.
no, still, at least you've actually sat down in front of a keyboard and started
Yes,
looking at it.
yes,
That's
yes.
a start. Um,
So this is what I'll say, and it came as a surprise to me. There was a program on television, a cable series some time ago, and the main character was a writer, and he wrote a book, and it was a smashing success.
hmm,
And somebody in his life wasn't very complimentary of it, and the person said, anybody can write a first book. Almost nobody can write a second one. And that really, that was fiction. That's just a fictional story between characters that somebody wrote. And that landed on me pretty tough. And I wondered if I would be able to pull off the second book.
mhm,
And here's what I can tell you. Here's the bit of advice. You get better as you practice. So frankly, I think book 2 in my series is better than book 1
mhm,
because it's 80,000 words later. I practiced for a lot of sentences.
right.
So it should be better. It absolutely should be a better story. It should be a better book. It should hold together. So my word of advice is get started.
Mhm,
It's not going to write itself. You have
right.
to get started. And even if you start with just a little vignette, or maybe, you do some short stories or a paragraph, those exercises are incredibly valuable
Right.
to get you focused and to move you forward. You might not be ready to start clacking away on the keyboard on the big project, but you certainly can clack away on that keyboard to write a paragraph
Mhm,
describing something that you see out your window. And
right.
the more you do that, the more you're writing, the more you're going to want to write.
Well, I mean, in my case, I started writing for a couple of online publications a couple years ago.
Yeah,
It started out with me writing little short stories, and they didn't go anywhere, but still, I had fun writing them. And then I started doing blog articles, which I hated, so I stopped doing that quickly. Um, and there were some that, and it goes back to what you write about. You know what I mean? So I pitched a little bit of a biography. There's a lot of things about my life that it's again, I understand. I spent, majority of my adult life in the military. So there's a lot of stuff I did in that career that I'll never be able to talk about. So
sure.
obviously you can't write them on a public online forum, but still people were interested to understand that it was a bit of a journey. So I thought, okay, I mean, it's not something I'm going to make a lot of traction with, but it got me thinking about things. So, like right now, for example, I'm about halfway through what I consider a military anthology.
Oh,
Okay. So it's like I tell my, people that are interested, I have a bunch of friends here at this one uh, publication that I write with, and they're the ones who encouraged me to start this. And I had some other people too. But the other thing is, it's a, it's a fiction, it's fictional stories, the short stories, and they're based on my exploits, but obviously, the details have got to be different, doing
yeah,
this and that, because there's some of that
yeah,
stuff I can't talk about, but still the stories themselves are loosely based on some of the things that I got into through the years. So again, it's one of those, it's halfway done, I just need to sit down and finish it.
right,
um, and so that's why I said it, at the very beginning of my journey, I tried this, this whole podcasting thing as a lark. I have a son. I've got 4 children, and some step kids, and my one son, who's a big media guy over in Texas. Oh, Dad, you need to do this. You need to do that. I'm like, okay. Thought I'd give it a try, and I'm realizing that, well, now okay, I tried it. Now it's taken away too much from what I really want to do.
yeah.
So I'm going to make some modifications here.
You sort of have to. I spend a ton of time, doing things for the back porch and the Facebook group. It's a ton of time.
Okay.
But the payoff is there. So
Okay.
if the podcast is not giving you the payoff that you need, I certainly understand. Maybe make a modification, maybe cut
Right.
down instead of a weekly. I don't know, when do your episodes air? Is it once a
Every
week?
Wednesday.
Wednesday. So maybe then every other Wednesday to
Yeah.
give yourself a little bit more time to write. It seems like you have good energy in your podcast, and it's a great way. It's a great vehicle to move your process forward. So you
Right.
don't want to disband it entirely, but make it work for the writing part of your job.
Right. And that's exactly it. Yeah. Good advice.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, I'm going to cut you loose here, and I appreciate you coming by. It was really, really great talking to you.
You as
Okay.
well. Thank you
Okay.
for having me.
I will definitely search out your Carla Vergot. You have to excuse me. I'm French Canadian to a large degree, so I tend to anything that even looks remotely French. You're going to get a Canadian
We'll French it
pronunciation.
up. You know what most people do?
Really?
We use the hillbilly pronunciation, Vergot. We say that nice hard GOT at the end, Vergot.
Oh, right. Yeah, I grew up on a small farm, a very, very small farm, very poor, very small farm, about 10 miles from the Canadian border when I was a kid. So up there, when I was a kid growing up, if you couldn't speak French, you couldn't even buy a loaf of bread at the local IGA.
Sure.
But anyway, the big thing is I will take a lot of this to heart. And I'm hoping a lot of other people will too. Okay. And I do. I gotta appreciate everything you imparted, all this wisdom you gave us here.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
All right. Take
Best
care
of
now.
luck to you. Bye now.
So I appreciate all this knowledge that she's passed on to us here. And I'm going to take a lot of it to heart. And with that, I'm going to let everybody go here. I'll talk to you again next week. Sláinte. While I still have your attention, I want to tell you about how you can support this podcast and my efforts in general. This podcast will continue to remain free to subscribe to on all the major mobile podcast apps, on my YouTube channel, Krana Biha, and for the first 30 days on my Substack page, Krana Biha, the Tree of Life at Substack.com. With that in mind, I'm asking for donations of any amount. I decided that I would rather ask for donations instead of charging subscriptions, so everyone has an opportunity to watch or listen to this podcast everywhere in the world. All I'm asking for is help in defraying the cost to produce and distribute this podcast and maintain my website. I've set up a donation tab on the Village Oak Tree webpage at rss.com and a donation page on my website at www.kranabiha.com, which are all linked to PayPal for your security. This way you can use any currency you wish from around the world, providing PayPal is available to you. Any amounts appreciated. Now, about my website. The easiest way to find it is to copy it from the background behind me if you're watching this video. If you're listening to an audio version, copy the website name from the podcast logo shown. Search for it and enjoy your visit. Lastly, I'm trying to sell some copies of my book, Fugitives in the New United States, which can be found at major book retailers around the world, such as Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Lulu. You can also buy from me direct through the bookstore page on my website. Fugitives in the New United States is available in hardcover, paperback, and digital form. Free if you're a Kindle subscriber. It's written for young adults and older, so it's safe. If this were a movie, it'd be rated PG. Look for Fugitives in the New United States at your favorite book retailer and enjoy it. If I sell enough, I'll find the time to write the second book in this series. So I want to thank you for your support, even if it's just a like and a subscribe on my social media accounts. Thank you for listening to the show today. I hope you enjoyed it and you'll return again for another episode of the Village Oak Tree. Please like and subscribe and reply on the podcast videos or the audio podcasts where available. This helps with distribution around the world to anyone who may have an interest in the interviews and commentary I offer. I appreciate everyone, no matter where you are in the world, who watches or listens to these videos and podcasts. As I say goodbye this week, I wish to leave you with this Irish blessing as you go about your day. May your hand always be stretched out in friendship and never in want. Slán go foil.